Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. Glad you could join me, whether you're listening or watching or both. Thanks for being a part of the Upland Nation as well. This week, late season pheasant hunting from one of the guys who lives it. He walks the talk, Casey Weismantel. He's also the director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Aberdeen, South Dakota. So the guy knows of what he speaks. We'll get some of the insights, and I can almost guarantee you'll learn something about habitat, bird behavior, shooting ability, and who knows what else right here on the Upland Nation podcast. Our Fix It segment this week, I'll help you as well finding late season birds with a reminder or two you might have read about, but you forgot. And maybe if you remember it next time, you'll pick up a bird or two. And we'll go to our social media to find out who your mentor was and what they taught you. I'm big on this right now because a lot of people are really looking for help. And it could be right there in the next room. It could be down the street. It could be a phone call away. We'll talk about who your mentors were and how that person helped you coming up right after a word from Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes tubes, Purina Pro Plan Sport, Sage and Breaker Gun Care products, Cable Gang's tie-out systems, Pointer shotguns, Heartland Lodge, and HiViz sights. They're the ones who give us the time and resources to make the Upland Nation podcast a reality. Here, it's all about special attention to my dog. I'll give you a perfect example of why. This season, this point in the season at least, so many things could go wrong. The habitat is changing. The dogs are a little more tired, so are we. So we're doing things we probably shouldn't do, whether because it's fatigue or we're just a little bit more distracted. With Flick, it's all about keeping him physically well. So during and after every hunt, I'm looking for the things that are little problems then that might evolve into bigger problems if they don't get attention. I'll give you a perfect example. Minor one, but it could get worse. I'm just stroking him in between runs out there on one of the hills I like. And son of a gun, if I don't scratch my own hand on one of those teasel seeds, a cocklebur kind of a thing. We call them porcupine eggs out here. You know what I mean. Well, he's got them on both ears. Both, and I mean a lot of them. In fact, he came back to me with both ears like this, like one of those caps. They were stuck up here together because he had so many cockleburs on his ears. Well, I had to peel those apart, and of course, he didn't like that very much because they hurt. Picking them out hurts. So you can imagine when you're pressing on them, trying to pull him out of his ears. That's a little problem, but it became a bigger problem by the end of the day. So I had to wait another day before he was so worn out, he would let me pull those out. And that, of course, is just part of the challenge. You're looking inside his ears, you're looking in his eyes, you're looking in his nose, and you're looking between all of his toes, making sure his feet are in great shape. Those are the things, like they say, an ounce of prevention rather than a pound of cure. Maybe you're learning the same thing this year. If you aren't, count your blessings. All right. So I want to go to our social pages because I've been asking this question more and more often these days. Who is your mentor, and how did that person help you become the hunter you are today? Well, some interesting, fascinating, I guess I'll call them very educational comments here. So let me just touch on some of those. Michael Augello, that was Uncle Brian. He got us all into the outdoors. No longer with us, but I think of him often when hunting. And Michael, I bet it's also true, like you say, he would love the dogs you have. Absolutely. Gordon Green's father, eat whatever you kill. I love that. Oh, except the starlings. Yeah, if you're living in rural America, they are public enemy number one. Maybe right up there with magpies. I'm not sure. Kent Baxter has a great story. It was a different world in 1972. I took a job at Trilab Acres. I was 12 years old. They were raising game birds, cleaning his boarding and breeding kennel. And Al Carlson did the job on him. Al was a pointing dog man, and did he ever. He got Kent into the game, and that was 50 years ago. Yeah, thanks to you both, Kent for the story and Al Carlson for getting Kent involved. For Jim Cochran, it was his dad, a game warden. And so you saw hunting, he says, from a different lens. It's absolutely true. Doubt if they could get away with it now, but back in the day, you could ride along with your dad if he was a game warden. Probably not going to happen very much anymore. Dad was a past master at sorting out the really bad guys from the nimrods that just didn't know. I'm 75, and not a day goes by that I don't think of him. Hey, Kent Baxter! You get your own shout out here from Walt and Jess Hetland. You were their mentor just a few years back. Yeah, when you handed over a high horsepower GSP, German short-haired pointer. Good for both of you. Joe Rundell, father, parents for Matthew Kolosnik as well. Court Green, yeah. Kent Baxter, man, you're in the Hall of Fame, my friend. Keep up the good work. My dad for Olson's Gun Dogs and dad for Arlen Derbreikery. I think it's Dutch, and I hope I didn't blow it too badly, Arlen. All of you folks who had fathers who helped you, or other parents for that matter, be grateful. Some of us did not, and we kind of learned the hard way as a result. Well, I'm glad to hear, and thank you for sharing some of those personal stories. I appreciate that. No matter what the question, we always get some great answers. Inspiring, moving, and touching in one way or another. That segment of the show, brought to you by pointershotguns.com, had a great discussion on a quail hunt just, 2 or 3 days ago with a friend I don't get to hunt with very often. We got to talking about shooting and how so many things impede or impact or improve our shooting. And he was shooting one of those new Pointer FT12 semi-automatics. He liked the way it swung. He liked the way it fit. He liked where his hand ended up on the forend. And boy, oh boy, it worked for him. It might work for you. There are some distinct advantages if you're looking for a gun that's going to help you shoot better. Take a look at all the styles, all the configurations, and of course, all the fits. You can do that so easily at pointershotguns.com because they have everything you might need. And that's before we start talking about colors for the metal and configurations from case coloring to all those Cerakote varieties. It's all there. You can pick them up at local dealers nationwide and then the big boxes as well. Learn more and find a local dealer at pointershotguns.com. And once again, a little bit moist by the end of the day on the last hunt I did. And so the first thing I did once the dog was up and watered was pull out my Sage and Breaker CLP. It's a little spray bottle, C, cleaning, L, lubricating, P, protecting from all the bad stuff that's out there in the field, dust, moisture, you name it. Spray that on, wipe it off. Give a little bit more right there where you close the gun up, and then put it away until the next day, and hopefully the next day and the next day. That's the joy of sageandbreaker.com. It helps you maintain your firearms in good, serviceable condition all season and beyond. Take a look at the full lineup of products, and then get on the mailing list so when new ones come out, you hear about it before everybody else. sageandbreaker.com. Well, I wish we were in person, but it's better than it's been for a while. Casey Weismantel joins me. He's the director of the Aberdeen South Dakota Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Casey, welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. How are you these days?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you reaching out and connecting with us here in Aberdeen. And we appreciate all you do and bring to the table, and we're just happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to be here too because I didn't get to South Dakota this season, and so I'm going to live through you how the season went. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. But let's start with Casey and Casey's bird season. How did it go for you this year with your? I think you have a relatively young dog plus a veteran dog.
I do. I have Luna that just turned 7, my wire-haired pointing Griffon. And then I have Thea that's just shy of 2 years. And I don't know what I did in a past life, but me and Thea don't quite see eye to eye. I do believe in a strong rotation of dogs, start out with one, switch to another, don't overwork them, right? And me and Luna, when we're out in the field, we instantly know what each other's thinking. We know what we want. We know where we want to go. We know what we want to accomplish. Thea, on the other hand, I don't know. I haven't quite figured out her language yet. She does not. She definitely does not have the love language for me. She's definitely my wife's dog, and we can reproduce different scenarios in the field or even training at home, where it's a matter of fetch and retrieve, and she flat out won't bring it back to me. She'll bring it back to my wife, but she won't bring it back to me. So we're still in the research and development stage. we're still trying to decipher the coding on Thea, but so far so good. She's strong. She's got about 10 pounds on Luna, and she's a tank, but she's a pistol. You don't quite know which way she's going to go or when she's going to get there, but so far the season with both of them have been good. We haven't had any complaints, but if I can get her on board, having Luna as the veteran and Thea as the enforcer, I think we would be a dominant pair out in the fields.
It's funny. The first thing I thought of was I did a quail hunt day before yesterday that turned into a chucker head. The further you go up your quail hunt,
Yep.
it becomes a chucker hunt, and that's where we were. We were on these big, wide open slopes, way up, probably about 5,000 feet in elevation.
Wow.
And I was just watching my dog, and he's 8 years old now, thinking, man, he and I are like one mind.
Yeah.
But that only came at about age 6. So there is hope for you and your young dog. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of I think it is almost biological, and it just takes time.
She even in the house, I can see it in the house where she just, you're playing a few games or interacting, and she just flat out looks at you with the stink eye and out of the corner of her eye. And my wife, she's all loving and there on the spot, and me, she just kind of sitting there scanning you from the side. And I don't know, we'll figure it out, but I have a lot of potential in her.
Well, whether it's with the young dog or the veteran dog, personally, how was Casey Weismantel's bird season?
It was good. We started out in Aberdeen here with the best weather you could possibly dream of. I mean, it just gangbusters, and the hunters were coming in and the dogs were coming in. But to be honest with you, Scott, everybody was struggling a little bit.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are, for some strange reason, and I don't know why. I'm not a farm kid. I'm a city kid that loves to play out on the farm. But for some reason, the corn harvest was late this year.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
late, and I don't understand why. I don't know if it was the beans that pushed the corn back, or if they were just waiting for the corn to dry a little bit. I don't know, to be honest with you. But um, a lot of people that were in town to hunt public land and to get on the birds were struggling because the corn was still standing. But now that the corn is gone, it's a game changer, and things are opened up, and the birds are definitely here. Guys are seeing birds everywhere, and now we've just gotten a brief shot of snow on the ground, and it's hit the reset button, as you and I know. All those birds are in that heavy cover trying to bunch up and stay together, and they're ripe for the picking. I mean, it really truly is coming off last year of a 10-year high. I think it was like 1.3 million birds harvested in 24. I don't see how we could not eclipse that this year. But you never know. Mother Nature's always in charge, and weather conditions do create challenges, and that might decrease some birds being harvested too.
Well, we'll talk a lot about that as we
Yeah.
get deeper into the podcast, but it is interesting. I don't remember anybody giving me a definitive answer on why that harvest was so late this year, but it was, and that did create some opening weekend problems for a lot of people. And the opening weekend stretched into the opening 3 weeks, I think, maybe even
Yeah.
further than that. But people still have to hunt in standing corn or standing beans, but not as much in the bean fields. In fact,
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever seen anybody hunt standing
Never seen
beans.
anybody hunt
Yeah.
beans. I've
But
seen people hunt radishes before, believe it or not. A field of cover crop radishes, and if you're brave enough to cut a stalk and take a bite, that's up to you. But I've never seen beans, but I've seen standing radishes before.
standing radishes, such as they are, that tall.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've actually walked in standing turnips. The deer
turnips. Yes,
the deer hunters,
turnips,
and
sorry.
and the cattle guys will do the turnips too, and the cows. Pardon me. The cows will discover them, and they're great cattle food, I guess. But
Yep, turnips. I
yeah,
said radishes. So there again, I'm not a farm kid. So
well,
yeah.
I figured that one out real fast. Well, when you were coping with that, whether it was guys coming in and pounding on your desk because the corn was still up, why can't you fix that?
Yep.
Or they were out there doing it, or you were out there doing it. I mean, are there some strategies for hunting standing corn that seem to work for you?
You're exactly right. That scenario happened. I had hunters that came into the office and they like to come visit, and I'm like, and you can see it in their face. They're struggling, they're having a little bit of a struggle. And, we pull out some maps. We start looking at some maps. We start going over the Aberdeen Pheasant Coalition information. I start, and they're like, well, yeah, we hit that spot, okay, we'll try this one. But really, that early season, when the corn's still standing, you just have to hunt smarter. Birds always are looking for a water source. So if you can hunt somewhere that's maybe carrying some water or holding some water, chances are you'll see some birds. Or even, take the day off and hunt the latter part of the day. That last few hours of golden sunset, I know a guy who hunts nothing but public land in Aberdeen. And he'll park his truck and he'll walk down the middle of the road, get to the end of the field. He'll cut back into the field and walk back to his truck. And chances are he'll put up or get access to his limit while he does it.
Wow.
But with that being said, he's hunting that last hour and a half to 2 hours of sunlight. He doesn't do anything the rest of the day except for hunt that last 2 hours of sunset.
What do you think what has he learned that we haven't learned yet?
He's just learning that those birds are going to start coming out of those fields. They're going to start coming out of that cover. They're going to hit those road ditches. They're going to start pecking some gravel, and that's just what they do. They expose themselves, or they come to the edge of the field where you can gain access to them. And when early season and you have a group of hunters, 2, 3, maybe 4 hunters with a dog or two, and they're trying to cover a big, wide piece of grass, that just ain't going to work out. And those birds are going to sidestep you, and nobody ever hunts that stuff correctly. And all you're doing is pushing birds. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your efforts, and you're wasting your dogs. And I think if people can look at a way to hunt smarter, not harder, they would have a little bit better benefit when it comes to bagging those birds.
I'm writing a magazine article right now for our good friends at Gun Dog Magazine about late season hunting, especially in the snow.
Yep.
But I want to go back to what you were just describing: 2 or 3 guys, maybe 4 guys, 2 dogs hunting a big field. That's just dumb. Instead, if that guy came in and pounded on your desk, what would you tell him and his friends to do?
And that actually happened. It happens every year, a couple times. And, we start looking at the map. The state guide, the walk-in atlas is green and brown squares on a map, but it doesn't tell you what kind of cover there is there, right? Onyx helps a lot. That's kind of your best resource. But what's nice about that Aberdeen Pheasant Coalition land is that is a partnership between private landowners and public access. And we've already gained that public access. We put it right in your hands, so it's available. But the nice thing about the Aberdeen Pheasant Coalition is it gives you a topographical view of what you want to go hunt. So if you're looking at site number 6, you could look at that and be like, well, it's just a big square of grass, chances are this, chances are that. Or you could go look at site number 23, and that might show a low spot or a shelter belt or this or that. It gives you that extra edge to key in on a lot of that stuff. And granted, Onyx does the same thing, but there are still people out there that like the old school method of circling and highlighting and scribbling on a map. And that's what we're there for, is to be able to provide that. And, after talking to these groups, you kind of quickly deduce that they've seen their limit of birds today. They just haven't bagged their limit of birds. And
Yeah.
I can do a lot of things, I can point you in directions, I can give you information, but there's certain things I can't do, unless I guess I go along and bag the birds for you. I'm not that good a shot, but I'll just give it a try. But when you finally start talking to people and you realize, they put up a dozen birds already, but they only got 2. Well, you know what? You saw your limit. And that's better than a lot of places in the country where you could walk for miles and miles and miles and never put up a bird. To gain access to something like that here in South Dakota and to put up those birds and take a poke at them. It comes down to access, timing, production, and dog work, and put all those together, and you're going to have a successful hunt.
You talk about the things that we all face. I was going up a really steep draw, looking too much at my GPS collar, saying the dog's up here. When my friend had to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Yeah, he is, but he's kind of right. See him right there."
Yep.
And so we're struggling up this draw, and it's a pretty good incline, maybe 40% grade, and we didn't get to that dog before the chuckers took off. And
Yep.
and that's, I'm sure, as much or more of a problem with a running bird, a
Yep.
more runnable bird like a ringneck.
Yep.
Um, you ever hear or use, I'm gonna call them mobile blockers, for example? I like to think that there are some places where one guy can get ahead by 100 yards and stop a lot of that running and a lot of that flying away in the distance.
Yep.
Has that ever worked for you or anything like that?
You almost have to, and regardless, you almost have to provide some sort of blocking, whether it's
Yeah.
side blocking, using the shelter belt to your advantage, side blocking on the other side, or have somebody flanking up ahead about 20, 30, 40 yards, side blocking, and then when you get close to the end, they run down and cap it off. Yes, that is really the ideal situation. Um, but what we've seen in the last few years is a tremendous amount of birds on the ground, but a tremendous amount of birds that are pretty flighty. I mean,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
pretty flighty. And, when you're getting to weather conditions like we've been awful dry for the last 2 years. I mean, when it comes to pheasant season, we've been terribly dry. We haven't had a winter in the last 2 years. This is the most snow we've had on the ground right now in the last 2 years. Last year, I never started my snowblower. The year before that, I think I started it once. And, but when you're lacking moisture or potentially lacking moisture, the birds are going to be where the water is. So then you're going to try to key in on those birds, but the conditions are so dry that the dogs struggle, and then you struggle to get close enough to those birds before they flight. Well, that's where guys are seeing birds, they're bumping birds, they're just not getting a shot at birds because they're flushing too soon or too far out. That's what we've seen in the last couple of years. And, that pheasant population does help carry over from year to year. That's kind of nice to be able to have that base. But, for us, the standing corn, unless you're invited along on a 20-man march, I just try to stay away from that stuff. I like to hunt those outskirts, the grassy area, the shelter belts, the low bottoms, and just take my time. And I think a lot of people, they hunt too fast, too
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take your time. You don't have to run and gun. Make sure the vehicle's in park before you jump out, for Christ's sakes, and I mean, just get ready, get set, and then after you're done with the field, attention to your dogs. Just take a second or two, and even walking the fields, when you're walking, walk about 20, 30, 40 paces, and then just literally stop and just stand there and let the dogs work, or just stand there, and you'd be surprised at how many birds get a little nervous and flighty
Yeah. Yeah.
and take off just because this is odd. Why aren't they walking? Why did he stop? What's going on? And flying is their last resort. They would want to run and hide. But when you can tip those scales and make those birds a little nervous and put them up, that's by all means is the way to go.
Well, you mentioned a couple things, and this probably holds true whatever time of the season it is, but there are certain places that a ringneck will go that we may not think offer any kind of refuge or habitat opportunity. You mentioned water a couple times, and I've
Yeah.
shot birds that have landed in the James River, and
Yep.
that makes for great television. I love that. But there are other kinds of water out there that we may not think of, and then there are other kinds of habitat. You mentioned low spots, for example. What
Mhm.
other habitat opportunities have you seen that aren't even on our radar screen?
You might find a field that's got like a dugout or a cattail slough, a water cat or cattle watering hole. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
surround that and let the dogs work and see what pops out of there. But you might find out here we're pretty flat. We don't have a lot of hills, we don't have a lot of mountains, we don't have a lot of this. But when you find a drainage ditch or a creek bottom, hunt the side of that creek bottom, you'd be surprised how many birds you'll flush out of there. They're looking for that water source and they're looking for that protection. And again, flying is their last resort. So you got to kind of always be prepared, when you're walking that field. Even when you're walking that low spot or that shelter belt, you might get to the last, I've seen it happen. You get to the last 20 feet of the shelter belt and guys will start unloading their gun. I mean, I'll reload at that point. I mean, it's by the time you get to that field, there's always seems to be one rooster left. And it usually schools everybody in the party. That bird will squirt out. And just when you think that there's no way a bird is going to be in this cover, chances are you'll probably find one.
Yeah, it's funny because, you go to some hunts that are, in effect, manicured for a hunting party, and every 50 yards or every 100 yards or at the end of every field, there's basically a blank spot, an open area, and everybody is the basic idea is the birds will run to that. They don't wanna walk or run across that, so they'll fly instead when the pressure from the folks in the field is great. But
Yep.
sometimes those, what I'll call blockers, the natural blockers are not as obvious as just a blank spot in the field. A little ditch, for example, or just
Hmm.
a change in the height of the cover from cut to, standing milo, for example.
Yep.
Anything else like that we should look for?
I think you've said it spot on. I think people are just need to hunt slower. I mean, I can't stress it enough. Hunt slower, take their time, let the dogs work, and everything else for the most part will work itself out. Again, those birds are going to look for that running exit versus that flying. Flying is the last resort. So if you can look at what you would think would be the running exit, chances are you're going to put yourself in the right position. I've been hunting with people in the past and they're like, Casey, why are you always in the right spot? Why are you always where the birds go? And I'm like, well, I just say, I luck out. No, I mean, you said it yourself, Scott. When you come to that field and you see that natural progression of thick cover to a really thin area, I get ready. and most people don't, I guess. But I do seem to kind of put myself in the right spot at the right time, and blocking that outskirt edge of the shelter belt or the far end or far this that. Just gotta. If you were a bird, where would you go? And then chances are that's where they'll be.
I'm also working on another story about this kind of stuff and how thinking like a bird is something. It's foreign to us, obviously.
Yep.
We don't have to worry about staying warm. We just put on another layer. But a bird has to find better cover, better shelter. We don't think like a bird when it comes to looking for food. But I better write this down. If you think like a trout fisherman and you're looking and you're looking for the things that a rainbow trout needs to survive, it's the same things a pheasant or even a valley quail need. It's pretty basic, and that's why we ignore it.
Yep.
Hey, everybody, that's Casey Weismantel with the Aberdeen Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm Scott Linden, your host. This is the Upland Nation podcast. We'll be back to Casey and more advice, particularly on late season pheasant hunting, coming up in just a moment. And speaking of that sort of thing, in our Fix It segment, soon after that, I'll talk about some of the things I've learned about where those birds go. Like I said, thinking, many people call me a bird brain, but in this case, it works. That'll be coming up in just a moment. And the Upland Nation podcast is brought to you in part by Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina. I was, paging through my emails and got a frantic request from a good friend, fan of the show, asking about his dog's, let's just call it their digestive tract issues. And he had been talking with a lot of the pro trainers and field trialers that he knows who rave about, the same thing I do. Never had a problem with Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina. He said that they said that is because of what I said, which is there is a lot of science behind that nutrition. In fact, I'll be talking soon to some of the veterinarians and nutritionists at Purina again for some exciting news coming up here on the podcast. But in the meanwhile, let me assure you that if you are changing dog foods, one of the smartest choices you can make is looking at the science of Purina Pro Plan Sport dog food. Not only that, but it must taste pretty good. I tell you, I never get tired of watching my dogs eat their Pro Plan Sport dog food. They can't really smile. It's impossible physically, but they can sure enjoy it, and they do. And what kind of dog food would you serve that they wouldn't want to eat? I mean, you might ask yourself that question, and then consider switching to Pro Plan Sport. Learn more at ProPlansport.com. And once again, I want to thank you, Scott Trulock, for taking care of all of our side-by-side aficionados who listen and watch the Upland Nation. Scott has made a very generous offer. If you've got a side-by-side shotgun and you want to put new chokes in it, but you don't want to change the aesthetic of your gun by adding extended chokes, well, Scott, if he doesn't have them already, will make you a set of flush mount chokes right there for your gun at no extra charge. Just go to TrulockChokes.com, learn more about what you're looking for, consult the 2 guides they have there for what kind of gun you have, what kind of chokes will fit it that they have, and maybe even some of the stuff you should have learned a long time ago about what all those scratches and dots mean on the end of your choke tubes. Call Scott direct. He'll fix you up with flush mount side-by-side tubes if he hasn't got any already in stock at no extra charge. Learn more at TrulockChokes.com. Welcome back to the Upland Nation podcast. On my right, your left, I think. Not sure. That's Casey Weismantel with the Aberdeen Convention and Visitors Bureau. He's one of us, got 2 ugly dogs. I'm jealous because I don't have a young one anymore, but I'm working on that. Honey, another couple years, maybe I'll get permission. You, on the other hand, are enjoying the wonders of a young dog and a wonderful place to show that dog some bird contacts. If you wanted to, you know, advise people on coming to Aberdeen in particular and South Dakota in general, you had a tip a couple years ago that I think probably was more useful to most people than anything else I've ever heard, and that was kind of the licensing scheme that you could use. I think you can still use it. Get us get a late get a season get a 10-day license toward the end of the season. Do you remember that talk?
Yep.
Yeah, what
We're actually
go
we're probably coming up on that special day here shortly. Again, I don't have that date in my head, but it's like December 12th or 15th or something like that. You can buy a license on that date or after that date, and a license is good for 2 5-day periods. And we're talking late season hunting at this point. We're early season's gone, mid season's gone. We're talking late season hunting, and how can I carry that over into next year? So there's a special date. It's like December 14th or 15th or something like that, where you buy your license and you can use 5 days in 2025, the 2025 season. You can use 5 days in the 2025 season. And then you have the agent date your second set of 5 days for the last 5 days of the 2026/2027 season. So, as you know, our pheasant season starts the third Saturday in October and it goes through the end of January. So, we are on season 2025/2026. So, if you buy your license sometime in December of 2025/2026, you can use 5 days this year, and then you can save your second set of 5 days for next year. And then you go back in where you purchased your license and you tell them, I want you to reissue my license. And then they'll take those second set of 5 days that are dated for the last 5 days of January of 2027, and they can move those 5 days up. So it's kind of a way of not even cheating the system. It's just taking advantage of it, because our small game licenses come out after the first part of December. So you're purchasing a small game license for this year, and you're utilizing your second set of 5 days for next year. To really explain it in detail, you need like a flow chart and bubble graphs and arrows and string and this and that. But there is a way to do it, and nothing against purchasing your license online. I know a lot of people that do it to save time, to save effort. I'm totally against it. I would rather you purchase your license at your destination. Go and purchase your license, pick up a box of ammo, buy a bag of beef jerky. I don't care what you do, but I just think there's advantages of talking to the locals. And, when you're messing with that license, you're trying to figure out that 5-day scenario, this, that, or whatever. Even when you're trying to do it in season, if you go back to the place you bought it from, chances are they'll probably recognize you and just say, hey, Scott, I need you to reissue my license again. I want to use my second set of 5 days. Absolutely. He already knows what you're talking about. You can talk to your computer all you want online, and they're never going to understand that. So there's advantages of talking to the locals. There's advantages of talking to people. And, when you get that license reissued, now you have your license to utilize for late season this year, and really any time that you choose to use your second set of 5 days for next year.
I love it. And I really love what you alluded to, and that is something I really believe in, and that is, hey, hunting is economic development. but like you said, buy that ammo, fill up your tank with gas.
Yep.
Obviously, you're going to stay somewhere, you're going to eat somewhere. All those things really do. I joke about it, but it's almost true. I go to communities where if you guys come in for dinner, you might be the difference between profit and loss for that day. That's
Yep.
that's how small those towns are.
Yep.
So that's the kind of stuff that makes sense. And then out of that may come something else. It may be some advice. It may be as simple as, no, that field's flooded, or it got grazed, emergency grazed this year, whatever it is. So I'm a big believer, and I'm glad you pointed that out.
I always tell people, it's always be mindful of who you're talking to, because somebody might take a shining to your ugly dog and say, hey, I used to have one of those back in the day. And you could say, I'm out here trying to put them on some birds. They might point you in the right direction. If you do get that access or that hospitality, get their name and their phone number and always stay connected with them. Who knows? You might just have established a relationship that you can use later on. But, those outside dollars that come into the community, we call them pheasantomics here in Aberdeen. And anytime you're looking at an outside dollar that comes into the community, that dollar can rotate 3 to 7 times before it's finally used up.
I remember
You know,
I got some change back from a watering hole in a very, very small town once a couple years back, and somebody had made a rubber stamp that they'd stamped onto that dollar, and it said, "These are pheasant hunting dollars."
oh, cool.
And there you go. Steal that idea, put it on
Yep,
all your money.
I like
um,
it.
and I'll give you one example of how your strategy works. Pardon me. So I've got the hard copy of the pheasant, the hunting atlas for South Dakota,
Yep,
and I slammed on the brakes at a 4-way stop, because they're all 4-way stops. They're all 90-degree angles in these section roads, and I'm paging through it, and some guy pulls up to my right at the other stop sign. So I wave him through, and he looks at me and he waves me through, and we do this a couple times. I notice he's got a dog trailer. He notices I got a dog box. I shut off the engine. I walk over. They say, "Hey, go ahead." And he says, "Well, no, I'm wondering what you're doing. I see your dog box." Well, I'm going from this spot on the atlas to this spot over here. And he says, "Well, why aren't you just going to hunt that spot right there?" I said, "Well, according to this, it's private property." And he says, "It's my private property." And that's the only wild melanistic pheasant I've ever shot.
Yep,
I
that's
have
awesome.
I have eternal gratitude for that guy. I
Yep,
got to meet a pro baseball player while I was there. We had a good time.
yep,
Um, anyway, back on task, such as it is. Um, we're talking late season, and things do change. Somebody shows up in your office to pound on your desk just because it's tradition now.
yep.
Um, and it's late in the season, and they're griping about the wind or the cold or the snow, or the wind, the cold, and the snow, and their hunting buddies bad shooting. What's the first bit of advice you're going to give somebody who arrives later in the season?
Again, we're going to key in on those shelter belts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and now cattails might come into play.
Mhm.
Even though nobody likes hunting cattails, they might come into play. But the other thing that I would recommend to them is I'll ask them, how far have you hunted away from Aberdeen? And, chances are they'll take out their map and they'll point to this square and that square and this square. And I'm like, well, you realize all of those are like within 6 miles of Aberdeen. I said, they get hunted by everybody because hunters are lazy or they don't want to drive another 10 miles to another spot. And so I'll start pointing out some different areas like, hey, here's a spot up by the North Dakota border. Here's a spot over by Sand Lake Refuge. Here's a spot over by Watonka and Leola, and just pointing in a few other spots. And they'll look at that, and you can see it in their eyes because they come from these heavy populated places that they're looking at like, oh my God, that's so far away. Well, in South Dakota terms, that's another 15-minute drive. Your coffee's still hot by the time you get there. And I told them if you key in on these spots, chances are these have never been touched in quite some time. And I usually run into them again at sports shows or travel shows, or they'll call the office or they'll stop by, and this time they won't pound on my desk. And they'll just say, hey, thanks for the tip. That was pretty smart that people, they hunt really close to Aberdeen, but they just don't quite venture out farther like they could. I had
Yeah.
some friends, some college buddies that were in town over the weekend and wanted me to tag along, and unfortunately I didn't because we were we were moving snow, and they said that they went out and they road hunted just in and around Aberdeen. I would say probably in a 6 or 8 mile radius, and they limited out, and they even picked up a grouse of all things. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right. Are we sure this is a grouse? We checked. It was a grouse, thankfully. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, there are birds to be had, and there's multiple ways to do them. But again, I just tell people, just try a little bit harder, venture a little bit farther. The amount of public land that's up by Hecla and Sand Lake Refuge is I just tell people, come on out, bring 1 or 2 dogs, bring 3 dogs, and we will wear them out because there's so much public
Yeah.
land up that
Yeah.
way.
That is classic advice that most people don't follow, and I've used it for years. I remember being at a hotel once in another town near you, and in South Dakota, even once the season is really going, you still can't hunt until 10 a.m.
Yeah.
So, pardon me. So you got plenty of time to leave and still get where you want to go, and you don't have to get up at the crack of dawn.
Yep. Yep.
I watched the parking lot at this hotel. Oh, pardon me. And it was like a Grand Prix race start. Everybody walks out. They're trying to be cool, but they're walking as fast as they can to get to their truck and pull out of there before all the other guys pull out of there. Sure
Yep.
enough, traffic jam in the parking lot. I, from then on out, would just get up a little earlier, get a bigger cup of coffee, and
Yep.
drive a little farther. And you're absolutely right. Nobody goes that far.
No, no.
So,
And I think, when you have a large group or a small group, if you can focus in on those cover areas that you want to be at, and again, do your homework. You might spend a day just scouting around, or you might spend a day scouting around, but if you're going to do that, you might as well road hunt while you're doing it. But you're going to spend a day scouting around and get your bearings and pick out the areas you want to be at. Don't hesitate to look just a little bit farther outside your
yeah.
comfort zone.
So you mentioned shelter belts, and I'm a big believer. Um, Water sources of one sort or another, cattails as a desperation move, anything
Yeah.
else in the way of obvious habitat that we walk past most of the time?
Yeah. Right now, like I said, we got a shot of 5 inches of snow, and then we got another shot of about 4 inches. So we're sitting at about 8 or 9 inches of snow right now. And my buddies were out again, doing some hunting, and majority of that's road hunting. But they found all the birds in shelter belts and heavy cover. So when we transition from early season, which we
Yeah,
struggle with crops to still standing in the fields and potentially it being too dry, to mid-season where the crops are down and we're starting to get access to those birds because now they're trying to find whatever cover is available once the crops are down, to transitioning to after that first snowfall, where now they don't want to be in that cover where they were before. Now they're looking for that dense winter cover, i.e. cattails and shelter belts, where they can be protected by the wind and escape and elude anything that might be coming their way. But they're looking for that winter cover just like we are. I mean, there's a reason why we wear a coat, right? When we're out in the snow, they're looking for the same thing. They're using that cattails or those shelter belts as their winter cover, and that's where you're going to find the birds.
Now, you've used the term a few times, and sometimes people use it in a derogatory manner, but in South Dakota, road hunting is, number one, a venerated tradition from way back. Number two, it's really not what we might think it is. Give us a perfect example of a legal, ethical road hunt.
Just always be mindful. You can't shoot on public, or you can't shoot on private property. So basically the bird has to be in the right of way of the road. Use that fence as an imaginary barrier. You can't shoot into or past the fence. You cannot legally go and retrieve a bird with your shotgun. You have to leave your shotgun outside the fence. You cannot use your dog to access private land to scare birds your way. So you can't use them as a hunter on private land. There are some big restrictions to road hunting because they want people to be safe. They want livestock and cattle and farmsteads to be safe and secure as well. But you know what? If you're looking at a spot on the map and there's another spot about 15 minutes away or so, why not road hunt from there to the next spot? And if you do get access to where you are going down a gravel road or a section line and you see some birds, stop your vehicle, pull your vehicle off to the side of the road as much as possible. Your vehicle has to be shut off. Your doors have to be closed. And then you can go and access those birds. And if you can fulfill all those requirements and check those boxes, well, then you're doing it legally.
And I
And
might
there's a lot of cover to be had in South Dakota road hunting. Um,
exactly.
it
That was
it
going
bur
to be
it
my
burns
point.
me it burns me every year when I see roadside ditches being cut too early, or center medians being cut too early because, I mean, let's be honest, it's not a food source, it's not habitat, but if it keeps a young little pheasant chick out of the 95-degree weather in some shade, well, then I'm all for it. But I think those roadside ditches are cut a little bit too early. Again, I'm not a farm kid, but I think we could hold off on that a little bit and establish that protective cover for just a little bit longer, and
Yeah.
everybody would benefit.
No doubt about it. And just for the record, the space between the edge of the road and the private property is often dozens of yards. So
Yep,
you're not walking the shoulder of the road most of the time.
yep,
And
yep,
often there's a ditch, and the
yep,
ditch has relatively good cover compared to some of the stuff out there. So
yep,
it's become a long tradition in South Dakota and other places. Some places even have what I'll describe as more loose rules about how you
yep.
access ground off the road, but that's good, and I'm glad we cleared that up.
I
You know
lived in Illinois for a few years, and the gun restrictions there were just insane.
Oh, I bet.
Uh, when you exit the field, even when you exit the field and you step onto the gravel road, I mean, your gun has to be immediately cased. And if not, if you can take it apart, they'd even be happier yet. But out here, you can road hunt and you can have an uncased gun, and we just want people to be safe and to be smart about it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, my thought is if it's a gravel road, you're probably okay road hunting. If it's a paved road, I don't think I would, because there's chances of machinery, farm machinery, or other vehicles, impeding your right to road hunt, and nobody wants that as well.
Yeah, and even before that, even many of the gravel roads during the harvest are like interstate highways,
Yep.
uh, but maybe they're moving at 8 miles an hour if they're driving the combine. We're talking late season to a great degree with Casey Weismantel at the Aberdeen Convention and Visitors Bureau. Uh, a lot of folks will advise us to change the way we shoot or what we shoot later in the season. Some people will even claim that birds grow another layer of feathers, and so we have to put heavier pellets into our shotgun. Do you see anything out there that in the way of adjustments to your shooting when you're out there later in the winter?
I would say that those people that think pheasants gain another row of pheasants probably don't bring them down to when they clean them to prove they don't. But I guess I stick with my one ammo. I run it from start to finish, so that way I know what it's going to do and how it's going to perform. Some guys will stick with, they'll start the early season in 6-shot.
Mhm.
They'll modify to a 5-shot and end the season in 4s. I don't. I start the season in 4s and I end in 4s. If that bird if that bird gets up early season, I might take a second or two and hold off before I pull the trigger and try to bring it down. But then late season, it's game on. That bird gets up, you bring it down. And birds are tougher than you think. I mean, there's guys that will put some lead in the air and they hit it, so it must have died, and they don't realize that, when you hit them, you got to make sure that you've taken that bird. And there's nothing that I hate more than leaving a wounded bird or winging a bird and not being able to find it, and some of those birds can sail quite a ways, when they're out there. But I want to, if I'm going to harvest a bird, I want to harvest it completely. I don't want to leave for chance. So,
Yeah.
um, you can do your 6s and your 4s. There's guys that will come out and you can hear it in their shot, and you kind of look at them like, what is wrong with your gun? And you find out that they might be shooting low brass, or they might be shooting 7.5 low brass. I mean, those are for doves. You don't bring those out for pheasant. But you got to remember that sometimes where these guys come from, it's kind of a put and take, or a bird farm where they could harvest a pheasant with 7.5. They might be putting a bird up, in close range. But out here, you don't want to take that shot. You want to, if you're going to take that effort, you want to harvest that bird. So I would plan accordingly.
The implication being, and we've talked all around it, uh, birds are probably a little bit more nervous and are going to fly a little bit sooner later in the season.
Yep.
So we need to use enough gun, as
To bring them down.
Robert Ruark said many years ago, and that for
Yep.
you is a number 4 pellet.
Yep. I shoot 3-inch mags, number 4. And, if they could, if they could make them longer, I would use them. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just truly believe I start the year in 4 and I end the year in 4. That way I know how my gun's going to perform. I know what choke tubes I have. I just know how everything's going to play out. And just give yourself as much of an advantage as possible. When you're talking late season, the other thing I will see is, guys they'll park their truck and they'll hit the lock button and they'll make their truck chirp, or they'll put a bell on their dog. And don't get me wrong, I'm nothing against dogs and bells, that to each their own. I don't run bells on my dogs. I don't really want to let the pheasants know that the dog's in the field. Or, just it's give yourself as much advantage as possible. I've hunted with buddies before they'll chirp their lock on their truck 2, 3 times. It's locked, for Christ's sakes. Just leave it alone. And at that point, I might as well just drop the tailgate, because you're not going to find any birds in that field. You've just told them that we're trying to come, and they adjust accordingly. They're gone.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen that happen time and time again. The other thing is a beeper collar.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'll even put my whistle inside my pocket so that I
Yep.
don't use it accidentally. Um, I have a collar, and most people's e-collars these days have what they call toned. It's just a
Yep.
little beep that the dog can hear, and you can hear at 10 yards, but nobody else can hear. And
Yep.
I've trained my dog to a command or two with that, so
Yep.
you don't even have to yell at your dog. And
Just give
I've
them a beep and they'll come around. They'll look for your attention.
exactly right. Yeah. You mentioned a few other places you lived, and I thought it'd be fun to close with something like this. If you
Yeah.
could you name a mentor, somebody who's really helped you somewhere along the way? Maybe it was last week, but um, here's your chance to tell everybody who it was and what they did for you, and maybe we need to find somebody like that.
Hmm. I think a lot of mine, Scott, is just self-taught.
Yeah.
I honestly do believe that. As a kid growing up, you pass the hunter safety course. You go out with your dad, he takes you out, you're amongst your dad and his brother and however many uncles come out of the woodwork, and you have all of that pressure to perform. And you do successfully to the best of your ability, but my dad, he took me pheasant hunting one time and one time only. That was it, one time. And then he kind of played the card of like, I'm just too busy. I got to paint the house. I got to mow the lawn, that sort of thing. And just, he wasn't into it. So I think a lot of mine was self-taught.
Yeah.
But I would pick up things along the way. I had a buddy of mine who come over from Greece. Dino, his first name was something I couldn't pronounce, but he just went by Dino, and his dog Azia. And he communicated with his dog in Greek. So all I ever heard was, and I don't even know what the hell I'm saying when I say this, but he would say Azia Katsakato, Katsakato, Azia Katsakato. And I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means. I'm assuming it's like Azia come or come back, or whatever. I don't know. Who knows? But, I would pick up things from him, and he taught me to hunt slower and to stop in the fields and wait. And when you make that pass or two, then drop the tailgate and have a sip of espresso and take your time. And he also taught me dog maintenance. He gave me a deburring rake for my ugly dogs to get those cockleburs out. So I thank all of that to him. And I just the amount of people that you are subject to that teach you so many things. I guess I can't really put a name on one, but I
Well,
do appreciate everybody who's given me guidance along the way.
and hey, Dino, Yasu. Um, Way to go. Yeah, we've got a lot of shirt tail relatives from Greece ourselves, so,
Do you as well?
yeah,
Nice.
wonderful, but, that's
Well, even
that's
even when I was
exactly right.
hunting with Dino, and I'm like, Dino, why are you spitting on my dog? He would literally spit on my dog, and he's like, that's a sign of respect. And I'm just like, you're spitting on my dog. I'm like, whatever, dude. I don't know. He could have been lying to me. Who knows? But
Well, yeah, you never know, and by the way, everybody, you don't have to go that far.
yeah, no doubt. Please don't.
I love it. Well, so I'm
Uh,
glad to hear that. I'm much like you, kind of learned it all flying by the seat of my pants. That's why I have to buy so many new pairs. They're worn out. But along the way, I've written on this subject. Along the way, we do, if we give it some thought, there are a lot of people who might have helped us in one way or another, and Dino is one of those. I'm glad to hear
yeah.
that, and
You
that's
know,
probably.
and even yourself, Scott. I mean, you've really instilled the love for the fuzzy dogs and the ugly dogs on my end. I had Gretchen, my German wire hair, which you got to hunt with
I
her
met
a
her,
couple.
yeah, yeah.
And then now I have gravitated to the Griffon. So, you've kind of helped instill that ugly dog or fuzzy dog syndrome on my end as well. And really, if it was me, I know there's a lot of people that run those labs and those short hairs. And to be honest with you, I don't mind having the different one. I don't mind it a bit. So,
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm flattered too. Just don't take any of my hunting advice. Uh, if you had to hunt a different game bird than ringneck pheasants, where would you go for that, and why?
I would hit the waterfowl. I just love to hunt waterfowl. I honestly do. I love the sound the decoy makes when it hits the water. I like the cold mornings. I like falling asleep in the duck blind and waking up. Yeah, I love everything about that. But with us here and with work, we're so enveloped to welcoming the hunters, the pheasant hunters, and rolling out the orange carpet that it just every year by the time I get access or a spare minute to go, all the ponds have froze up.
Ah,
Like they literally froze the night before. And I'm like, oh great. Well, there's another year gone. But I love to waterfowl hunt. I truly do. And pheasant hunting is one of those things where it doesn't take a whole lot to get into. Good pair of boots, blaze orange cap, and a trusty shotgun. And if you're lucky enough to have a dog and so forth. But there when you're talking waterfowl, you're going off a whole completely deep end of investment, monetary investment, and maybe it's a good thing I don't dabble in that too heavy, I guess. But
Yeah, we were arguing about that very subject a while back, the idea of, well, why are there only so many thousand members of Pheasants Forever versus so many members of Ducks Unlimited? And it's, in part at least, that deeper financial commitment you make. You buy a truck, you buy a trailer, you buy
yeah,
40 dozen full standing reel decoys, whatever it
yep,
is. Hell yes, you're going to join Ducks Unlimited as well. And it is easy to pheasant hunt or quail hunt or even chucker hunt, except for the climbing part. So a lot of those people maybe don't have the same, I don't know what to call it, commitment.
yep.
Well,
To each their own. Everybody has their own vice, right?
that is, we live in America where everybody can break their own ribs.
Yep.
So always fun, great late season advice, great early season advice, and great to see you literally this time around. Casey
Yeah.
Weismantel is the director now of the Aberdeen Convention and Visitors Bureau. Casey, you have a website devoted just to guys like us. What's the URL for that?
Yep. We make it as easy as possible. On that website is anything from public hunting to private hunting to Aberdeen Pheasant Coalition information, really everything you need to see or do to plan your trip. And our website is huntfishsd.com.
I think I'm going to give you all the credit for coming up with that one and grabbing it before anybody else. It's brilliant, and keep up the good work as usual. I'll see you at Pheasant Fest. Enjoy the rest of the season, what there is of it out there. And thanks so much for being part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having us. And, if anybody wants to come our way, let us know that you heard this podcast. You'd be surprised when you're talking to people at sports shows, Scott. And they're like, hey, I heard you on a podcast with a guy talking about ugly dogs. And they don't remember anything but one key portion. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And then you gain that friendship. So,
I love
yeah,
it.
thanks for having us.
It's my pleasure. Take care now.
Thanks, Scott. Bye.
Hey, we've still got a little bit more to cover here, including that Fix It segment, which will be all about the stuff we've talked about. I'm going to give you just a little bit more insight, maybe go a little deeper into a couple things that might help you with late season birds. If you're lucky enough to get out, maybe when the snow flies or the rain drops or the temperatures plummet, it's all coming up here on the Upland Nation podcast. After a word from my good friends at Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, this is about the time you try to figure out what's wrong with your gun. It's no wonder you're shooting so poorly, right? Well, if you're ready to shop for a new gun and Browning is on your short list, there's no better source than midvalleyclays.com. They got a great relationship with the Browning factory. They get a line on many of the hard to find models. Maybe you're looking for a special piece of wood or an obscure gauge, whatever it is. Dave Fiedler and the team at Mid-Valley Clays can probably hook you up better than anybody else out there. Certainly better than the big box stores who couldn't care less about your shooting ability next season among friends. So if you're shopping and you're shopping for Browning, go to midvalleyclays.com, take a look at the gun room and the pro shop, and then talk to Dave Fiedler. Let him be your gun shopping guru. Tell him what you're looking for in the way of success, what kind of birds you hunt, that sort of thing. And he might have some advice that is a little bit more helpful than some of those guys who are just hoping to check you out as soon as possible. It's all at midvalleyclays.com. And I just got a great Facebook message from a friend of mine. Brett, I can't wait to see you at Pheasant Fest, by the way. Glad to help. Brett asked something that I'm happy to admit. He said, I know you talk about HiViz sights on the show. Do you actually use them? Do I ever? What little shooting success I have, Brett, I can attribute to those fiber optic light pipes. They are the cat's meow, pardon the pun. They're interlocking, interchangeable, easy to move from one shotgun to the other. And the fundamental idea there is we point a shotgun, so we shouldn't be aiming down the barrel and looking at the bead. But we need a bead because we got to match up the bead and the muzzle with the flying target. How do we do that? We see it with our mind's eye. Keep your eyes on the prize. That's the flying bird. Your mind will see the bead. When they match up, pull the trigger. Hopefully the next thing you do is yell, fetch. Learn more, watch my video on the topic at HiVizSights.com. Well, let's fix some of those late season challenges we all face, whether it's because of snow or cold or wet or all of the above, like last week. But here are some of the things that I've observed and learned from folks who are way better hunters than me that may be of use to you. Let's fix some of those late season challenges. Let me dispel a myth. If you're in the West or anywhere where you're hunting elevation, any place where there's hillsides, birds don't always dwell solely on the drier ground below the snow line. There's a lot of reasons they'll go up into that snow. If they could scratch through it, there may be more food up there. Sometimes it's simply a matter of walking over the snow so they can get to better cover that will keep them warm or dry. So don't fall for that old wives' tale that birds never go above the snow line, and vice versa. Don't just hunt below the snow line after a first snow especially. That's number one. Remember, too, and again, this is where your biology comes in, food sources will change the longer you go into the season. The seeds are all eaten. All the fruit starts drying up and falling off. Well, when that starts to happen, think about what else those birds are going to eat. I got a great story from a fellow chucker hunter last week. One of the birds he shot the crop was full of pine nuts. 2 + 2 = I'm going to go hunt in those trees once in a while. So consider the change in food sources, no matter what bird you're looking for. You rough grouse hunters, you know the drill. Once the snow is covering the ground, those birds are going to go looking for greens on shrubs. They're going to go up into the trees. Some of those spruce grouse got the name because they eat spruce needles. All of those things should enter into your thinking before you exit the truck on a winter hunt. I hope it fixes some of your challenges just a little bit, and I hope I see your boot prints out there late in the season as well. Well, thank you, Casey Weismantel with the Aberdeen Convention and Visitors Bureau. If you want to learn more about what they've got to offer early, late, and in the middle of the season, go to huntfishsd.com. Thank you to everybody who's recommended the podcast, either in audio or video form, to anybody else. Please urge them to come on board and subscribe as well. Thank you to our sponsors, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, TrulockChokes Tubes, Pointer Shotguns, Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Heartland Lodge and Cable Gang Stakeout Systems, and HiViz Shooting Systems. You know, you can learn lots more about most of the topics we cover on the podcast in great detail at findbirdhuntingspots.com. And with that, I will thank you and thank Casey again for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. Be safe. I'll see you out there.